What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Paul and this is the first in a new series. Today we're going to take a look at 3 fighters you have to look out for this weekend. If you are in fact planning to sit down and watch some fights this weekend, there's not a whole lot of top tier MMA going on, but the UFC are arriving back in Denver, Colorado with a fight night, and the card is pretty decent overall, so we're going to pick out some names from there that might be worth keeping an eye on. First up is Fatima Klein. 23-year-old American is making her UFC debut on very short notice. She just took the fight a couple of days ago, I believe, and she's going to be facing Jasmine Jasudavicius. So she's in there against a fighter who's been in the UFC for quite a while. Jasudavicius has had 6, I think, UFC fights so far. 4-2 record, yeah, and she's been in there with some decent names like Miranda Maverick and Tracy Cortez. So, you know, she's been competing at a pretty high level. Fatima Klein is coming in at 6-0. She fought the first 4 fights of her pro career under the Invicta banner, and the last 2 fights were title fights in 2 different weight classes actually at Cage Fury, CFFC. So shout out to my pal John Morgan who called the fights for them. Fatima is a really dangerous grappler. She competes a hell of a lot in submission grappling, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that type of thing, Jiu-Jitsu black belt. She's known for that, but she is a very well-rounded fighter. She's mostly competed at strawweight in her career. This fight in the UFC this weekend is at flyweight. Now, her last fight was a flyweight bout. She fought for the vacant CFFC flyweight title after winning the strawweight title in the fight before that. So, you know, she has competed at the weight before, just hasn't got a mountain of experience there. So it'll be interesting to see if that plays a part in how the fight goes. She's, as I said, a really well-rounded striker. Her Muay Thai has looked really good, none more so than in that last fight against Andressa Romero. That went all 3 rounds, but she got to really showcase her talents. Her kicking power and her variety looked very good. Her Muay Thai is excellent, you know, going along with that, you know, credentialed Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game she has. She's competed a hell of a lot on grappling invitationals, submission grappling events, that type of thing. In her MMA career so far at 6-0, she hasn't really, you know, been strangling everybody. She's got 1 submission victory there, but she's been using those jiu-jitsu skills quite a lot to, you know, dominate positionally and really implement a lot of ground and pound, which is what I love to see MMA fighters doing, really diversifying their grappling game, not just going in there and trying to play, you know, if you come from a sport jiu-jitsu background or a submission grappling competitive background, going in there and trying to do that in the cage can sometimes lead to issues. You know, you can end up trying to play a game when there's no time to play that type of game. So she does very well just to dominate position and use it to cause damage. That's the key and the scoring criteria in mixed martial arts these days. So she's a fighter that's very impressive. She is just 23 years old as well. You know, she's really growing fast here and really making a name for herself over the last couple of years. Her grappling is probably her A game, but as I said, super well-rounded. What I'm interested to see is, on such short notice, can she hang with somebody who was already training to be on this card? Fatima Klein took this fight, as I said, a couple of days back. She was originally preparing to fight Alexia Thayanara on the Contender Series, which was due to take place in September. So she was kind of brought in under the UFC radar. Here's your opportunity, you're going in September. And then this opportunity popped up, so they moved her into this one. Let's see if she can be ready physically, you know, physically, stylistically, tactically, all that type of stuff. The fight she was lined up for in September, on paper for me, I mean, that could easily have been a slightly tougher fight for her than this one. It's difficult to know. We'll know more when we see her in action this coming weekend. Jasudavicius, as I said, is in there quite a while with the UFC. She's fighting in there a couple of years now. The opponent she had lined up for September, Thayanara, 10-1 record, plenty of submission victories, so that could have been a really interesting test of her grappling credentials. But this fight's taking place on the undercard at Denver, Colorado this weekend. Definitely a prospect to look out for. And staying on the team of submission hunters, also on the card is Gabriel Bonfim. This guy is absolutely sensational. 15-1 record now. He's just 3 fights deep into his UFC career. In his last fight, he picked up his first defeat. He's the 26-year-old welterweight lost in November when he was finished by Nicolas Dalby in round 2. No shame in that. Dalby is a wily veteran. He's been around the game. He's been in there with some big names, and that's a tough opponent for anybody. So he came up short there against Dalby, but you know, he had won his previous 2 UFC bouts by first round guillotine. So he strangled Munar Laziz with a mounted guillotine in the first round, and then Trevin Giles with a a regular old guillotine. Before that, he got into the UFC via the Contender Series, and he got in with one of my favourite submission methods, the Von Flue choke, also a first round finish. He's a real strangling machine. He loves the neck. So the Von Flue in itself it's one of those chokes that I just get so excited when I see fighters get in the position to pull it off. But more often than not, they maybe don't have the awareness or don't have the skill set, don't have the tactical know-how to know that the opportunity is there, and you see the opportunity go begging. This guy got one in the Contender Series to get into the UFC, and he's there now, and he's strangling, he's strangling opponents more often than not in there. Outside of the UFC too, he's got a whole lot of strangulation submissions on his record. He has 12 submissions out of his 15 victories total, and all have been chokes, triangles, rear naked chokes, guillotines, and even a darce in there. He's up against Ange Loosa this weekend. That's not really an easy task either. I mean, he had that step up against Nicolas Dalby the last time. This one maybe isn't at the same level, but it is still quite a difficult opponent. Ange Loosa has won his last two, albeit by decision. He's beaten AJ Fletcher and a friend of mine, Rhys McKee, and he's looked very good in doing it. He did lose his UFC debut to Munir Laziz, so they have a common opponent. That was 2 years ago. He also lost to Jack Della Maddalena, incidentally enough, a couple of years back. I think it was 2021 on the Contender Series. So both of these guys have come through that path to get into the UFC. One interesting thing about Gabriel Bonfim's opponent is that he's never been submitted. So this will be, an opportunity for him to really lay down a marker here. If you can put this guy away inside the distance, that'll be a great way to get back on track. But, it's also going to be a victory that's going to be probably looked back on in years to come as, a big one for the books. So really good fight to look out for, Gabriel Bonfim. And then finally, we're going to look at the main event. Tug Rose Namajunas, she's back. She's been on an interesting career arc over the last couple of years. She's been through the wars a little bit. She's fought for, she's got to the title twice. She's beaten some of the biggest names in the sport. She has 2 wins over Zhang Weili, 2 wins over Joanna Jędrzejczyk. So, Rose has been at the very peak of the game. You're looking at pound for pound women fighters over the last 5-10 years. Rose is right up there in that discussion. She's 32 years old now. She's fighting Tracy Cortez in the main event this weekend. The former strawweight champion, Rose, has gone 1-1 since moving up to flyweight. So this one's at flyweight as well. She, of course, was competing at strawweight for years and years, and she doesn't look like the biggest flyweight. So it was interesting to hear her. She spoke, I believe, saying that, weight cutting was becoming a problem for her. So, it's interesting to see how things will pan out. People sort of expected her to be a contender coming into this division, but she lost her first fight to Manon Fiorot when she came into the division. She picked up a win the last time out over Amanda Ribas. That was in March, and she's back now. Since losing her belt to Jessica Andrade, her strawweight belt, she came back to beat Andrade, although Andrade had already lost the belt, so this wasn't a title fight, and has only fought twice in the last 2 years since that bout. So, her drive sometimes after hitting a stumbling block in her career seems to come into doubt. Maybe she gets in her head a little, I don't know. She had that stinker 2 years ago. That was her last bout, actually, wasn't it? The Carla Esparza one, where she lost her title to Carla Esparza in what would probably go down as one of the worst fights in UFC history. That was at UFC 274. So she's had her ups, she's had her downs, but we haven't really seen her bounce back, hurriedly from those downs. She does take her time. I think she was out for a year after she lost to Jessica Andrade that time when she got slammed and lost her title. I think she took a year out before sort of regathering and coming back in. So I'm very, very interested to see how she does this weekend. I mean, she's in there with Tracy Cortez. Now, Tracy Cortez is 11-1. That's a strong record, but she lost her pro debut. She's won 11 fights on the bounce since. There's only 2 finishes on that record, and both of them happened a long time ago. In her 5 UFC fights, they've all gone to the scorecards. She's winning fights, but she hasn't really tested herself at the high end of the division. This will be her sort of first time dancing under the lights, the real bright lights. So Rose, I mean, if she was to come out of this with a victory, that would really rubber stamp her name as a contender going forward in that division. But Rose Namajunas, I think there's plenty still left in the tank. It's just the question remains whether she really wants it. Does she really want to press forward and get into that title discussion herself now after that difficult start at flyweight? So what do you guys think? Is there any other fights on the card that I'm missing? Anything else that you want to see? Anything else you're looking forward to? For me, those 3 fighters are the ones that maybe have the most jeopardy riding on their performances, or ones that could be going somewhere with a win this weekend. Let me know what you think. Hit the comments below, get involved in the discussion, and thanks for watching the video. Give it a like, share it, and I will see you next time. Take it easy.